Hello, I'm here today to share with you about mindfulness and self-compassion. I learned about it a few years ago, I think that it was around 2014, when I attended a conference with Christopher Germer and Christine Neff. Both of them are the power duo who created mindfulness and self-compassion. And it's really powerful, and I feel that it's very important to talk about each of the components so there is a better understanding about it. Specifically about self-compassion, Christine Neff, she has done a lot of studies about it, and she identified three main components of self-compassion. So the first one, she talks about self-kindness versus self-judgment. And self-kindness is being self-compassionate, is being able to treat ourselves as we would treat somebody that we really care for. And most of us, most people really tends to be harsh with themselves. Like, we might be more patient, more tolerant, more understanding with others than we are with ourselves. On the contrary, it's easier to self-judge, and most of us have a huge part inside of our heads, or a huge voice, which is a self-critic that is always judging and being mean to ourselves. Also, being able to be compassionate entails concern about the alleviation of suffering. It's like this desire of end suffering and do something about it. So from that point of view, there is an active element being self-compassionate, and it's kind of finding a way to self-soothe or to do whatever it takes to relieve a little bit of the pain. And again, this is something that we easily can do when we see another human being suffering, but it's difficult sometimes to do it with ourselves. And my hope is that with these talks and different tools that we might share here, we will be able to get closer to that practice of being kinder to ourselves, especially when we are suffering. And the second component is, she calls common humanity versus isolation. So when we are practicing self-compassion, we see our own experience of imperfection as part of the fact that we are human beings, as part of this imperfect experience. And we are able to recognize that everyone suffers. Everybody has to deal with something, and suffering is part of life, and is something that is normal. And oftentimes we struggle with that acceptance, and we feel that if we're suffering, something is wrong. Maybe there is something wrong with who we are. And then we start feeling like there is this abnormality, and we tend to even believe that other people is having a perfect life, they have it together, and it's just us, the ones that are defective, or the ones that cannot be a happy life. And from that derives this sense of isolation, like this is only happening to me, when in reality is something that affects all human beings in different degrees and different ways. And the third component is mindfulness versus over-identification. So in order for us to respond to our own suffering with compassion, first we have to realize that we're suffering. And mindfulness is what allows us to turn toward this painful experience and be with that experience as it's evolving. So pretty much mindfulness is talking about being able to be with yourself moment to moment as you are experiencing that situation, that moment to moment life as it is, not changing it, not trying to minimize it or maximize it, or just being a witness, and that's it. So this is a balanced state of awareness where we are observing our own experience. We don't suppress it, we don't avoid what we're feeling, and we don't become carried away by the dramatic stories that we have in our head. Because sometimes it's like we think in black and white, and maybe we think, oh, everything bad happens to me. I have bad luck. There is something wrong with me. And then we feed these stories that kind of push us to over-identify with the difficult situation, instead of seeing it as an experience that also is temporary. And that's another thing that we tend to forget, that any suffering experience that we are having is going to pass. We don't know how long it will going to take before it passes, but it's going to pass. So pretty much it's being able to live moment by moment as it is happening and the way that it is. So pretty much the self-compassion involves being in a state of loving, connected presence, being kind, being aware of how difficulty is part of our own reality as human beings, and being able to be present with the experiences. So when we are able to embrace ourselves, our lives, and others with this sense of loving, connected presence, our experience becomes transformed and transforming for those around us. So it is an opportunity from this perspective to start living life as an opportunity, and to see the difficulty as a doorway to progress. And this made me think about, how a seed has to break the shell in order for the plant to grow and flourish. So it's kind of the same way for us, like we're not a flower or a fruit since the beginning. We are a seed, and we are evolving, and we are kind of deconstructing and reconstructing ourselves at all times. And the most important thing is to keep in mind these three concepts of practicing kindness to ourselves. And for that, it might help to think, when we are having a negative or a harsh conversation inside our heads, it might be worth it to ask ourselves if we will use the same language to a friend that comes to tell us what we are experiencing. And most likely we will be kinder. So maybe imagining that you are that dear friend that comes with a problem and is in this hard situation, and we offer kindness. Maybe using this idea to start getting closer to treat ourselves better, to be more gentle. And also keeping in mind that the struggles that we live are part of our human condition, and we are not alone on that. Not only because we always have our own self, but we also are part of this human species that suffered as well. And keeping in mind that we create more suffering if we resist the experiences that we're living. So the saying of what you resist persists is very true. When we kind of don't want to deal with something, want to avoid it, want to suppress it, is when that something becomes more present. So I will invite you to think about, Buddhist principles of no attachment to any experience. And that's mindfulness. You just witness and experience the situation, life, the moment to moment, without trying to transform in it. So it is not resisting the unpleasant and not attaching yourself to the pleasant experiences, but just keeping in mind that all experiences are temporary and all of them bring possibilities of enjoyment or learning, understanding, transforming. So I hope that this information might light some bulbs or bring some ideas to think about, and maybe to be more aware on your day-to-day life. How can you start being a little kinder to yourself? Well, as always, I hope that this conversation might be useful, and until next time.